Hey everyone, Kaz here from Two Woke Watch Snobs. I'm very excited to be talking to you today about the Yema Urban Traveller. This is the integrated bracelet stainless steel sports watch collection from Yema. I've had the pleasure of spending a few weeks now with the watch in order to do this review. So, really, what I want to touch on in regard to our discussion here is five main areas of the watch that I feel maybe a lot of other kind of comments or reviews either didn't mention enough or didn't mention at all, or maybe something I can elaborate on in regard to my specific experience with this timepiece. So, with that said, we're going to be chatting through the case, we're chatting through the bracelet, the dial, the movement, and then I want to get into the overall wearing experience and really the value prop of the watch itself. So, I want to dive right in and chat about the case dimensions here. So, again, this is an integrated bracelet stainless steel sports watch. So, the case and the bracelet are going to be one and the same, but I'm going to do my best to actually separate them. There's one really specific thing I want to hone in on in regard to this timepiece. If you are considering purchasing this watch from Yema, is that the specs say one thing, and the actual wearing experience says something else. So what I'll say is this. Let me take it off my wrist to better illustrate this. So, case diameter on the website is listed as 39 millimeters, and that is from 3 o'clock to about 9 o'clock here. That's fairly accurate. There's other spots on this watch because, given this sort of 8 straight sided shape, although there's a bit of a curve on these ends here, it's not your traditional shaped watch. Given the shape of the watch, there are some areas where you might be closer to 40 millimeters, but 39 millimeters, 40 millimeters is pretty close and true to the actual diameter wearing experience. Now, the next two measurements are a little bit different. So the website lists the thickness of the watch here at 11.4 millimeters. In reality, it's closer to about 14 millimeters. That is including the crystal up top here. Very, very slight dome, it feels like. I would almost just call it flat, but there's a really slight dome there. And in addition, the 14 millimeters in thickness also includes the case back. So it will wear a bit thicker than 11 millimeters says. So again, what I really want to get through is all these kind of measurements because there's something really interesting that's actually happening here in regards to this watch that you'll find me not often saying about larger timepieces. So 43.5 lug to lug is what the website says. So to be fair, the watch is 43.5 millimeters lug to lug. If you measure from this first receiving end of the watch case for the bracelet, so this is a fixed section of the watch here, this kind of center link area. So if you measure from the center link on this side to the center link, kind of area, receiving area on the watch case from this side, yes, that is 43.5, millimeters. In reality, because of what this bracelet's doing, it does not articulate out that joint. And because it does not articulate at that joint, the true actual lug wearing experience is closer to here, which is about the first. Let me get this in better light. Sorry about that. Which is about the first lug. So, measurement on the websites from there, your actual wearing experience is going to be from there. That said, according to my measurements here, this is closer to a 54, 55 millimeter wearing experience on the case. So that's obviously a very large lug to lug measurement. So that said, I actually do not mind that. If anything, it adds to the appeal of the timepiece. This watch wears very large because of that relationship of the bracelet to the case, because it doesn't have that taper. But that said, the 39 to 40-ish diameter case actually balances out really, really well. I find the larger, robust wearing experience of this timepiece lends itself, very interestingly, a bit more to the actual ethos, at least in concept, of what made integrated bracelet sports watches very popular. These are, I think, the ethos, the idea is that yes, they're luxury watches, yes, they're beautiful pieces of jewelry in regards to, having a very Genta-esque design. At least these days, a lot of the integrated bracelet watches we're seeing, have that. So obviously, yes, the watch is beautiful. Yes, it's a generally very expensive object, but it's a sports watch. It should be okay. You should not feel guilty hitting this thing against a door sill or taking this with you and having it wear damage, having it log memories that you have with the watch. So Yema calls this collection the Urban Traveller, I think with that idea in mind. This is very much a watch that you can take with you. You can either have, as your everyday watch, you can have it be as your travel watch. And because of the robustness of this case construction and the bracelet, we'll get to the bracelet, the watch will wear damage very, very well, which I think adds the kind of well, the technical term is badassness. That kind of adds to the badassness of the watch. There are some entries, both affordable and then some entries that cost as much as a car in the integrated bracelet sports watch world where maybe you don't want to get them scratched. Maybe they're meant to be treated a bit more delicately. That is not the case with the Yema Urban Traveller. This thing needs to be worn. This thing needs to be used. It cannot sit and just collect dust or be your quote unquote nice fancy watch. This is not that watch. This thing needs to get banged up. And the overall larger wearing experience actually adds to that very well. Apologize for not saying this at the beginning. I have a 6.75-inch wrist. I do not have a giant wrist. This watch does wear large, but honestly, it feels very, very balanced, and I could see myself wearing this thing every day. That said, if a 54 to 55-inch lug-to-lug wearing experience uh, is maybe a bit daunting to you, that's definitely something to keep in mind. I think it might work for my wrist because I have my wrist on top is on the flatter side. So, if you have a bit of a rounder wrist, it might be a bit more difficult to justify the 54 to 55-ish lug to lug wearing experience. So, additionally, in regards to the case, I want to call out the crown does not screw in, is not a screw down crown. It just kind of pushes in, pushes out, XYZ. But the case is a screw down case back. Now, I want to wrap up this case section with the design of the watch, the design of the actual case. I mean, the design of the case is very, very interesting. Obviously, very evocative of some more interesting designs in terms of like the Genta-esque shape. This is not a traditional shape. This is something you would see maybe in an older watch. But what I do like is these, I guess it's kind of like a stylized fluting. These little open areas here, these little dimples on the stainless steel bezel here. If these were not here, this would be kind of a boring watch, but those add a very nice, almost modern design flair. What I actually really enjoy about the case is because of this very, very older vintage watch kind of in this vibe case shape, because it evokes that, but also because of just what's happening here with this top section that's fit into the middle section here, where it almost just looks like it's screwed in or kind of placed in there. It has a very industrial design vibe, which I think actually adds again to this idea of this is a watch that's not supposed to be babied. So I really want to call that out something very, very beautiful. This is a wonderfully designed watch. It's pulling together a lot of very interesting motifs and ideas, but it's also not inaccessible. This is not a crazy looking watch. So I really do appreciate that about the case. I want to transition to the bracelet here. The junction between the bracelet and the actual case is very, very nice. There is no play at all that would make me feel like it was an unsecure connection. Carrying on this idea of really, not meant to be a watch you kind of baby, the bracelet features very, very minimal polishing. The only polishing that occurs is on the side here. You can kind of see it. There's not even polishing between these links here. So sometimes on these kind of tight finished bracelets, these especially on integrated bracelet watches, you'll have a bit of a high polish as some kind of flourish between these items here. That is not the case on this bracelet, but that does not mean the bracelet is any less beautiful. It rolls and catches light incredibly well, and it still really balances those elements of being something very, very robust, very, very reliable, but also, frankly, pretty damn beautiful. What's really, really cool I want to chat about as well is the clasp. The butterfly clasp on here is definitely, on one of the nicer experiences I've had with a butterfly clasp or a hidden clasp bracelet. That's sometimes what these are called. So when you wear it, you don't see the clasp and you get this this kind of very aesthetically pleasing continuing sense of links. I should actually probably throw it on my wrist so you can see what I'm talking about. So you get this sort of continued experience of just, I can't turn my arm anymore. of seeing links and seeing how it rolls the light. What's really cool about this bracelet here, it actually locks in and feels really, really secure. I've interacted and experienced a lot of these hidden clasp butterfly style bracelets where, I'm going to get really in the weeds on this one. These hooks here, you can actually see they're very pronounced hooks. Those hooks are maybe not as pronounced on other clasp watches like this. And so what ends up happening is when you go to release the watch, you'll press the button, but they won't fully release. You'll press the button and you'll have to kind of like jerk it open the rest of the way because it's just not as secure of a mechanical sort of click as you get there. So I felt very secure wearing this watch, kind of walking around doing my day-to-day thing as part of my notes and everything like that for the review. So I just wanted to call that out. This is not a flimsy butterfly clasp. Last note here on the bracelet, it starts here at 24 millimeters. It does have a taper down to 20 millimeters. Now, 20 millimeters relative to 24 millimeters is, 4 millimeters. Cass can do math. So that is, a pretty typical taper. More for something from like 20 millimeters to 16 millimeters. So, despite the fact that the bracelet tapers down 4 millimeters, it does not take away or imbalance the larger, more reliable wearing experience of the watch, but it does make it, a little bit more comfortable. If this was 24 millimeters all the way around, it would not work. I don't think it would work as successfully on my wrist. So really, really, really cool about that. Everything on here is incredibly tight. Ooh, last note, and then I promise I will move on. I could talk about this watch for hours. This is a pin and collar bracelet. There are no screw links here, but what I will say is the collars are huge. The collars are basically the entire span of this center, faux center link area, or this receiving end of the link area, which makes it very easy to take them out, put them back in. You're not going to lose them, but they're still secure enough to give you a very, very solid, fit and experience here. So they're not going to fly out. You're not going to have the experience of, pin slowly coming out like you would sometimes get on really cheap bracelets. That's definitely not what's happening here. So huge props and huge call out to Yema for doing a pin and collar bracelet, frankly, pretty well, and for really nailing this butterfly clasp. I've been having a ton of fun, frankly, just fidgeting with it. So thought that was pretty interesting. I want to talk about the dial a little bit here. I want to transition to the dial. The dial is it's a combination of sort of like a honeycomb and some sort of jewel gem shapes. It's very interesting. There is a pattern here that is emerging. It is not glossy, not quite matte. It's definitely kind of a semi-gloss sort of finish. There are 5 color varieties that you actually can get right now. I think I might have mentioned this in the review when I started, but if I didn't, I'm going to say it again anyway. You can get this in white. You can get this in a very soft blue. You can get this in almost sort of like a salmon, like a warm salmon color. You can get this green one. Green's where it's at, in my opinion. Or it also comes in black as well. So the dial colors are very diverse, but they're not crazy and breaking the vibe of what this watch is. It's supposed to be a watch you wear every day, and frankly, probably get the shit beat out of it. You're supposed to wear it. You're supposed to show the watch love by just not sweating the small stuff if it gets all scratched up or dinged up or whatever you do. However you decide to wear it, just don't swim with it because the crown doesn't screw down. I guess you could swim with it. It should be fine. Actually, don't swim with it. It's not that watch. If you want to swim with it, get a dive watch. Actually, what's really, really cool here, the watch does have lume. It's not the best lume, nothing I'll really write home about, but it has enough lume for you to read it in the dark. Exactly what you need. You're not going to win any lume contests, but that's fine. These are applied markers with metal wraps around the outside. Very, very cool. Let me see if I can get in here tight. I'm getting my fingerprints all over this watch in the process of this review. Sorry, y'all. Let me see if I can get in here tight. Yes. See the hands? The base of the hands are the same color as the dial, which gives the watch a really nice, almost like a custom vibe, almost like very much like a boutique watch vibe. This doesn't feel like watch hands they just pulled out of a catalog and slapped on their watch. Like, it gives it a very, very nice extra attention to detail touch, and also it makes the watch feel a little bit more modern, just because that's something I wouldn't typically see. So I really do appreciate that smaller touch. The second hand here is a very, very elongated point, which also has that green. You can see really subtly there, right there. So I very much appreciate that. The hands are the perfect length. You can actually see it here a little bit. The hour hand goes exactly where it's supposed to go, right there. The hour hand goes exactly where it's supposed to go. The minute hand goes exactly where it's supposed to go, right on the minute track on the outside. What I want to share though is, and this is something that I had a couple experiences with, and I'm curious if anyone else who has this watch has experienced that as well. 39 millimeter, 40-ish millimeter case diameter, 30 millimeter dial. The dial diameter is only 30 millimeters, which means I have about 10, give or take 1 millimeter of just metal, here, which adds to the design, which adds to the watch feeling very robust and reliable, and a solid unit. But there is the potential for the dial ratio balance to be slightly off and to not really have a lot of legibility. And I'm pulling the watch back from the camera for a reason, especially because depending on the situation, if I don't have a lot of contrast going on to hit the hands, I have to rely on the loom to see where the minute and the hour hands are. And the loom is, pretty thin. It's about as thin as the markers. So that may not be an issue for some folks, but I found, in moments where I'm just quickly going to go and check the time, it was a little hard to read. So I think you sacrifice a little bit of the legibility to increase the wearability of the watch, and honestly, to have a beautifully designed object. Like the case and the bracelet are the star of the show, along with the dial texture, obviously, but legibility could be an issue for folks. If you have experiences like that where you like the dial to go all the way towards the end, this may present some issues for you in regards to that. I want to chat. Excuse me. I want to chat through the movement here. The movement's actually really, really cool. The movement is where I think it's important to talk about Yema as a brand a little bit. This is an true in-house movement. That is the Yema 2000 automatic movement. Yema, for folks who don't know, is a legacy European brand based in France. It is a legacy French brand found in the 1940s. Like most European brands, it fell into some really hard times during the quartz crisis. So the quartz crisis is the advent of digital watches impacting, traditional watchmaking industries. And so lots of brands had to consolidate. Lots of brands have, kind of fell through. In the case of Yema, the ownership of Yema changed entirely to, a non-French entity. And then it just kind of sat in the jug drawer until about 2 decades ago. Eventually, the brand Yema found its way back into a proper French ownership, in which time the owners took it upon themselves to revive the watch brand. During Yema's heyday, or quote unquote heyday, where it was under original French, or at least it was still based in France before the quartz crisis and everything like that. Yema had a very strong relationship with French aviation, French automotive sports, those types of things. And so there's a very strong ethos of engineering built into just the history of Yema. I think that's what informs this very interesting lunge for Yema to provide in-house movements. So this is the Yema 2000. As I mentioned before, there are a series of other movements. There's a GMT that they do. There's a micro rotor movement they do, which is very, very interesting. That just recently started to include that in other new watches. There is an older version of the Yema Traveller with a different dial pattern that has the micro rotor in it. It's also 2.2 times the price of this one, which we'll get into at the end. But this one here, this is really the kind of bread and butter movement. The Yema 2000 is the ubiquitous answer from Yema for things like the 2824 or the Miura 9015. So in terms of specs here, off the assembly line, I don't know, out the gate, it is plus minus 25 seconds a day. It can be regulated to plus minus 10 seconds a day, which is actually very, very nice. In addition to that, it has 42 hours of power reserve, 29 joules, automatic movement. Everything like that makes it a very interesting, not popular addition into this, like I said, mainly ubiquitous workhorse movement, three-hand movement area that we're seeing a lot of brands take advantage of, especially in the boutique and micro brand world. So The one thing I did want to share about this movement, and I actually am curious if anyone else experienced this. Actually, let me see if I can if it'll happen on camera. I only had it happen once. Nope. Okay. Uh, I'm calling this out, but I'm not honestly too concerned about it. So when I first got this watch from Yema, within the first few days, I went to go and set the time, and I pulled the crown out, and so the watch just manually winds, as you've seen me doing throughout this review, and it also hacks. So by hacking, I pull out the crown, and the second hand's, oop, it did it right there. I hope everyone caught that. Um, that will sometimes happen where you pull the crown out and it will either slow crawl hack, or I think, as we just saw, I'm pretty sure I just captured it. I'm going to go back and rewatch this to make sure I actually captured it. As you just saw, it will continue ticking. So it's one of two things that are happening. It's either user error, like I may not be pulling the crown out all the way. I may not be pulling it out right. So here in this instance, I haven't pulled it out all the way. That's me pulling it out all the way. So okay, what I just showed you was user error on my part. I don't think I pulled it out all the way. What did happen when I first undid the watch, I did pull it out all the way, and what it did was it kind of it like skipped. It still did one tick, and then it kind of slow stopped. Uh, I had originally chalked that up to, honestly, it being a new movement. Maybe some of the lubrication hadn't fully distributed yet. You do have a wearing period with the most mechanical objects. It's an automatic mechanical movement. Um, but what we just saw there, that was user error on my part. That was me not pulling the crown out all the way. But what I had happen off camera, I had that happen to me, and I went and I looked around, and it seems like other folks have had that happen where you pull the crown out all the way, and the second hand sort of like skips and then stops. Um, I haven't had it happen since. I only had it happen when I first, started wearing the watch. So that's why I just kind of really chalked it up to the watch being in its wear-in period. But with that said, if you own a watch with the Yema 2000 movement, and you noticed that as well in your movement, can you please let me know in the comments? Let me know so we can start maybe consolidating some thoughts and things like that in regards to the movement. Anytime a brand does something that no one's ever done before, or mechanically, tries to be innovative, there are going to be moments where you can't compare in-house movement that's only existed for a short amount of time against an in-house movement that's existed for, decades and decades and decades. I'm incredibly excited to see how Yema continues to iterate on its in-house movement line. And that's actually one of the very interesting value props about the brand. So I want to use that to transition into really the last part of this review. I want to chat through the wearing experience of the watch and overall value prop. So again, obviously the wearing experience, I've been talking about this entire time. It wears large, but it is fantastic. I feel like this watch can go with me anywhere. I feel like I can get it dinged up and it'll be okay. It wears very large for a reason. It feels very robust and secure. In terms of a value prop, and this is also why I'm very excited about the movement. I'm not too concerned about that strange issue I had out the box. You can pick this up on the Yema website right now. The time that's recording it is March 30th, 2024, 890 USD. That is an amazing price for something that is a legacy European brand, something with this incredible fit and finish, with this honestly very unique and beautiful design, and just this robust reliability. It's a very, very interesting addition into the integrated bracelet sports watch world. So at the price point of 890, I think this thing is totally worth people considering. If you're looking for an everyday watch, but you don't want to do like a field watch, and you don't want to jump on a dive watch, it's an everyday watch crowd. Like, maybe you don't want that. Maybe you don't want a big bulky G-Shock, or you don't want a giant dive bezel, or a field watch that looks like it's from like World War One. Maybe you want something that's an everyday watch that's still a beautiful object that you don't have to worry about babying. That is what this watch is. I would highly, highly consider it. So one last shot here again on my wrist, on my 6.75 inch wrist. This is the Yema Urban Traveller. I have had an amazing time spending I've spent an amazing amount of time with this watch, and I've had an amazing time spending that time with this watch. Boom, there we go, got it eventually. So huge thank you to Yema for allowing me to do that. I'm incredibly excited to see what the brand continues to do. With that said, let me switch cameras on everyone. Boom. So, if you have any thoughts on the review, if you want to share your thoughts or feedback on the content of what I shared, what I said about the watch, please let me know. If you have any thoughts or feedback in regards to my recording setup, also please let me know. I am figuring this out as I go. Got a new mic, still on my old camera. I'm surrounded by a bunch of lights. I feel like I'm interrogating myself right now, which is fine. There are 4 lights. That's kind of how I feel. Very specific reference. That's kind of how I feel right now. But if you have any thoughts on my recording setup, please let me know. I would love to hear it. Also, really big thing. If you have a watch with the, damn, this is a good looking watch. Shit, sorry. It's a really good looking watch. If you have any experience with the Yema 2000 movement, and you have that, and if you had that one time experience with the weird hacking stutter, please let me know in the thoughts. Please let me know the thoughts in the comments. That said, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm gonna continue doing reviews like this. I obviously did not keep this review short. It is a 25-minute review. Sorry, that's what you signed up for. But with that said, thank you so much for the time, everyone. Let me know if there are any other watches that you're interested in me reviewing. I have a bunch on my list right now. I'm going to keep doing these. With that said, keep tuning in to Two Broke Watch Snobs podcast. Keep checking out twobrokeWatchSnobs.com. And, keep being awesome. Thank you.